Welcome to Selling Circular, the podcast that explores the intersection of commerce and sustainability. Today, we're diving into the world of reusable cups for takeout beverages. While a simple concept, it has far-reaching implications for reducing single-use waste. I'm Garr, CEO of LoopLayer.
And I'm Sabira Lakhani, VP of Product at Reaply. Thank you so much for joining us as we continue to interview entrepreneurs and industry leaders, and we're trying to uncover innovative strategies and real-world examples in businesses that are integrating circular principles into their operations today.
Okay, and new listeners, please make sure we hit subscribe. It's the easiest way to help grow this circular economy movement we're working on, but you can always reach out to us on LinkedIn or visit our new website at sellingcircular.com.
It's fresh. And also tell your friends and colleagues about our podcast so they can also learn.
Yes, it's fresh, as some say.
Which is like the reusable cup concept. Fresh?
Totally. Yes, fresh. Absolutely. So when we were thinking about which episode to do here, I wanted to relay sort of the personal anecdote. We love our reusable cups from Starbucks. My partner happens to be a partner at Starbucks, and she is actually obsessed with their concept of reusable cups. But that's entirely different than what we're going to be getting into today. That's more like you can buy a reusable cup. They're willing to fill it up at the location, at the Starbucks. But this is very different. This actually is dealing with reusable cup programs that are much more scaled out to multiple locations.
That's very cool because actually I'm more of a Dunkin' person, no offense, yeah. Starbucks, but
none taken.
COVID made everything really rough, and I'm happy to hear that Starbucks and what we're going to talk about, which is a very cool concept, is back in action. And I think I haven't asked in a while, but like I'm still not seeing a lot of chains necessarily, except your personal, reusable.
Oh, have you tried at Dunkin'?
Mm-hmm. But I have to try again. I just started to give up because I would get mad. So then I would just be like, okay, I'm not going to
angry
ask.
In the store and then be like, fine, I'll take my donut as well and leave.
Yeah, that would be bad for me.
Well, these reusable cup programs, they are gaining more traction. And they should start as really the sustainable alternative to disposable cups. But as we said earlier, implementing them at scale does kind of present some significant challenges. So while the potential impact is enormous, these initiatives often mean that they need to start small, carefully designed pilot programs to test and refine the concept. So in order to scale these initiatives, companies need to gather that crucial data on consumer behavior, operational logistics, and even the environmental impact. And that all takes a little bit of time. And creating the technologies and systems that will revolutionize how these systems actually will work and change the way that we consume beverages on the go.
And we're talking about like a widespread, not a single company, that we're gonna get into what collaboration could look like. And one technology company that is breaking ground and helping a wide-scale initiative bring reusable cups to a town is Muuse, and we're going to be talking to Brittany Gamez, co-founder, and COO of Muuse, and they are building a smart track and trace technology platform, which enables third-party reusable cup packaging programs to operate and have access to their own data. Brittany is also spearheading this exciting project in Petaluma, which I was hinting about. It's Petaluma, California. I love that name. There's something about Petaluma.
Yeah, there's something
catchy.
I don't know. There's something kind of lovely about it. Yeah,
Yeah. And this program there's a lot of eyes on this program, and it is a pilot, and we get to learn about it directly from Brittany. So let's jump in. We're going to hear from her on the challenges and the wins and the future potential of a reusable cup program. Starting now with Brittany Gamez.
We can rip right into it. Right in our intro, as we were starting to talk, I interrupted you as you were explaining what a cool platform you all are working on. Could you start again and explain the acronym of the name, if I just remember correctly from this, and then a little bit more about how you guys started getting into this?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm Brittany Gamez, co-founder and CEO of, or sorry, COO of Muse. Sorry, Jonathan, not trying to take your show though. Um, but no, so Muse stands for multiple use, and we are a smart track and trace technology platform that can enable any third-party reusable package into our system. Right now, mainly focused on F&B takeaway packaging, but our product agnostic. We provide serialized QR track and trace system that can enable any reusable product. Again, food and beverage packaging, cosmetics, you name it, it can be put into our system where customers can borrow and return that product. The way it works is similar to a library book or scooter share program. You sign up for a free account using either the Muse mobile app or our web app. And then from there, you can you add your card details, and it is like an accountability or penalty model system where you're only ever going to be charged as the consumer if you do not bring that product back after the 30-day return period. It allows
Hmm.
us to be able to put higher quality products into our system. So stainless steel is definitely, we're a fan of stainless steel, but also have, more durable plastics, and really anything that we've deemed fit for reuse.
Now,
I
oh my
have.
God, no. I
Oh,
want to unpack this. I'm gonna get this here. Which is like, because like you said, you nailed down that language really well that I want to unpack quickly for those that are listening, which is,
Yeah.
and I can't even repeat the language used, but it was the accountability aspect, which
Mm,
is different than what would be from I'm guessing a deposit based type
correct.
of action. So not producing or forcing a consumer to use upfront capital to get a reusable object, but to say, hey, you didn't do the thing you agreed to do, so now we have to penalize you. But I just wanted to make that
Exactly.
clear. And real quickly, why was that the go-to action, do you think, for you all?
Yeah, so I'll give a little bit of backstory. So initially started off as Revolve, and we were actually on the island of Bali. This was in 2018. We had started with a deposit-based model out there, right? And it was just a simple, you pay the cashier, they give you it in a reusable. When you take it back to any of the participating locations, they'll give you that deposit back. Found that, it works for certain demographics and it works for certain people, but it doesn't work for everyone. Unfortunately, some of the feedback we got from locals was like, I love this, I want to participate in this. But when you're asking me to put down a deposit that is equal to the amount I'm paying for my food, it's a little hard to justify. And so it was something for us. We kind of knew we were building out and wanted to build out a platform for reuse and a platform to be able to manage this. It just took some time, development, and obviously funding to get that kind of going. So really, it was a way for us to kind of get our gears off the ground and just understanding what it was that we were doing in the first place. And then from there, had launched our technology platform. When we first started, which we were using RFID, NFC, just testing out different things with different materials as well. And then kind of landed on this system through trial. So we ran a project with Next Gen Consortium in 2018. We were one of the finalists for the Cup Challenge, and it brought us to San Francisco, where we had launched our application really kind of for the first time live in a city environment, where it was a deposit-based model, if you will. So a customer would still sign up for an account, they'd put their card details down, and it would actually place a hold on their card. So when they borrowed, it would place, $10 to $20 hold, depending on how many products they were checking out at one go. Which again, just from consumer insights, we're just like, hey, I like this, but I really don't like that there's a hold on my card. So again, found that over time, by eliminating that aspect of it, we opened it up a little bit more to people that, again, maybe aren't in the same financial place as myself or you and others that had the luxury to be able to put down a deposit and be able to tap into this kind of system.
I really love that. And I know when we say reusable packaging, for me, before you started to hint at this right now, the range can be anything from something really small to something really big. And so if we're painting a picture for the audience here, what you're talking about is like container style, at least if we're thinking about the F&B space, food and beverage space, that it's like container style that's holding the product that the customer is actually consuming, and the packaging itself is made of more durable material than like single-use containers.
Correct. So we have stainless steel cups in our system. We have stainless steel food containers. We have plastic cups for events, plastic food containers. I think overall today we probably have about 18 or 19 what we call SKUs, which is mainly just products, right? Anywhere from a cup to a food box, a pizza container, that are actually implemented for people to be able to borrow.
Is that dependent on a brand? Who's making that choice, I guess? Is that a brand that's saying, hey, this is actually what we're looking for in terms of a SKU? Or what's the decision criterion there? And which application of reusable containers being used?
It's a little bit of both. So
Okay.
we look at the containers first off and we test them and ourselves. Like you are looking at the ultimate product tester, but because before I got here, I kind of started off interning and then I've worked my way up. But they had me doing most of the product sourcing and product research. So I would test food containers and cups durability to see how they lasted. And it was one of those things that there's a lot of products out there, and some of them claim to be more durable than they are, or made up of certain materials that maybe they're not. If you do a little bit more digging into, starting off, we've made mistakes along the way. I think all of us have, and I'm happy to be able to admit that. Where at one point we did have a food container that was a bamboo material that had melamine in it, as we found out later. And we're like, oh, this is actually terrible because end of life, what are we going to do with this? We can't do much with this. So we are the ones that kind of influence that product decision by coming to the customers or partners to say, hey, this is a recommended product based off of our research and what we've seen. But then if they have specific criteria and needs that they have, we'll also do independent product research for them to see if maybe we can source them something that's better, or for other third parties like Starbucks, for example, who we operate with in Hong Kong.
Hmm.
They have their own reusable cup supplier that they use to be able to just put into the Muuse platform.
I appreciate you being honest with the difficulties of growing a new concept,
Yeah.
the missed paths, the things you guys went down. You were like, oh, that didn't work. And I think
Yeah.
ultimately for us, we have this season here of season 3 for us, in which people are getting really honest with the growth opportunities that come from mistakes and come from saying, what if we tried this? All right, that really didn't work. We got to pivot to this other. So it's like, it's fitting right in with a lot of other entrepreneurs and leaders at these companies we've interviewed that have made these types of similar pivots and try to say, hey, this wasn't right. We need to go this way for this growth of this program.
I love that you use the word pivot because that is literally my go-to word that everybody knows
Yeah,
nowadays, because especially in the industry we're in or what we're doing or the project I'm working on,
exactly.
that is
Yes.
my word. I'm like, cool,
Yep.
pivot. Oh, what happened? Oh, this messed up. Okay, pivot. Yep, that's all I can
It's
do.
Well, and I think that's what it's for all of us. And Sabira and I learned this too early with Reaply, and continue to learn it in both of our ventures. It's there's so many barriers in terms of what we're trying to innovate and what we're trying to pursue that you just kind of keep having to hurdle, move around, get under, whatever it takes to kind of try to figure out what this next solution is going to look like. That's kind of the goal. And the only reason I harp on it is that if anybody's listening, that they understand that this isn't easy, that it just takes the ability just to keep sort of moving and figuring out the next angle.
Yeah, and it's the fact that we're not, everyone within our space, I really appreciate this because we are innovators. We're creating a blueprint that hasn't necessarily been made outside of like the milkman model, right? We're following a very old
Yeah.
system that we're now reintroducing new ideas and concepts to new generations. We're adding technology to it. We're trying to convince, brands or consumers or customers that to switch over to something that, to be
Hmm.
honest, is never going to be as convenient as single use. I will not even pretend that I will get to the convenience of single use ever, because once you've lived in other places like Bali and you've seen people just throw their garbage out the window, I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to be that convenient. Not, nor do I want to be or condone that, But
Yeah.
it just is something I think that is a good reminder that we're not necessarily trying to match the level of convenience that the single use economy has had on us, but really just trying to innovate and re-innovate something that, again, has been done before, but in a new way.
But from our research, it looks like y'all have a very high return rate for the items. So can you talk a little bit about that and how
a combination of the technology has helped, but also how the users have gotten on board, how the economics play into that. Is what you're saying is, yes, there are mistakes to be made or there are struggles and we're not going to be as convenient, but it looks like you guys have hit the nail on the head a little.
Yeah, so we have a return rate of 98% in our normal system, which is really great. And that has to do, I think personally, with the fact that we are running with an accountability slash, and I say this and people sometimes are like, "Oh, maybe you shouldn't call it a penalty model," but it is. Again, there is a quote unquote punishment if you don't participate in the system correctly. Now, that punishment, I should say, means you get an awesome, durable product. So again, you're just purchasing something, right? It's not like I'm charging you for something that you don't ever get.
I
You're
like
just
that. It's
basically now
actually
buying that.
purchase opportunity.
It's a
Yes,
purchase
that's what it
opportunity.
is. Yes, when you don't return something, you're buying this nice item.
You're
Yeah.
buying this thing, right? So that's why it can be a little tricky when you say that it's the punishment, because it's really just you didn't participate correctly, but here you go, you get to keep the thing. And it's funny because I do also have people that have come up to me at events or they see the coffee cup and they will look me in the face and say, "I'm not giving this back to you. I'm keeping this." I'm like, "Okay, I wish you wouldn't, but like as long as you reuse it, then I can't really stop you, right?" Um, and so, yeah, I would say some of that success has been through, we've tried to make it as convenient to return as possible by expanding the amount of locations that we have in our participating regions. So, just so you guys are aware, right now, we have operations going in Singapore, Hong Kong, Toronto, Banff, as well as the project that I've launched in Petaluma, California. And so, yeah, the convenience of return being one of those factors, notifications being the other one. So we have set up our system to be able to notify users once you start getting to certain marks. So if you're at the 14-day mark, the 21-day mark, 27-day mark, 29, 30, to just let them know, like, hey, we'd like this back. Hey, you're getting closer. It's actually built into the application itself as well to give you a tracker so you can see you have 15 days to return. You have 8 days to return. It notifies you to tell you. We send out email reminders. And then really the luxury of being still a small startup is that I have consumers reach out to me via email and say, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I'm out of town. I forgot to return. Can I have an extension?" And you reach out and we're more than happy to do that, right? So we have that luxury still, and we definitely do have plans in the future to be able to kind of build out the platform of, okay, is this an upgraded feature we can add in? We know that
Right.
people would love to see it and use it. Can they essentially use points to get an extension? Or if they're participating correctly, can we reward them for doing so?
What I love in that is pulling the threads on maybe the social interaction of why this system might be working is deposits are fine. It's another avenue, but what you're essentially doing is saying, hey, I don't trust you to return this thing, so I'm going to penalize, but charge you for that thing that
Hmm.
you're taking from me. But this seems to be setting up in the way that you guys are pivoting into, or it did pivot from deposit into this new accountable system, is saying,
Hmm.
hey, this is what we're building together. We're going to trust you. And actually, what you all are really interestingly doing is taking the risk a little bit onto you from an operations standpoint that you won't have enough cups. That's the dramatic end of this, is that
Yeah.
everybody loves your cup so much that no one returns it and your system can't work. But even
Hmm.
then they're paying for those cups. And so then you can buy more cups. But I would love your thoughts on trust and how you all think of that. Because even in that communication and transparency, it's all about enabling that trust in that community. How have you all thought
Hmm.
of that in terms of what you're developing and how that plays out in that interaction and communication?
Yeah. I would want to say right now, because it's still kind of this opt-in
Yeah.
system, the people that are choosing to do this are again doing just that. They're choosing. They
Yep.
want to
Early
do something
adopters.
like
Early
the early
adopters.
adopters, the greenies as we call them, right? They
Yeah,
are the
totally.
eco-conscious and they want to make a difference. They think it's cool. They like the fact that they're not maybe drinking out of certain materials they don't want to be drinking out of. Like, so it really is kind of right now, I would say those early adopters that kind of are helping us to influence that trust. Now, not to say as we grow and change that we might also have to grow and change and adapt if we start seeing that, certain consumers are taking advantage of the system. Maybe more people are borrowing products and not returning them. That we will have to also pivot at that point. But for now, because we are in the luxury phase of still having some of the early adopters within our system that just love what we're doing and want to support us, it really does allow us to just open it up for people to really just freely use. Same thing with, there's not a limit for how many products you or I could borrow at one given time. It's just as long as we have our card on file or our Apple ID set up or our Google Pay set up, then really we're connected to that and we're accountable for that.
That is interesting because I'm not here to throw a wrench in any language, but there is a limit to how many books I can take out at a library. So it's like it's interesting that because it's so commerce based, that it's like no, it still has to. There has to be. I need to be able to function as a consumer. That I need to be able to just go every day to get a cup and use that cup or turn that cup in. That it just has to be able to be, infinite to my consuming ability, I guess.
Yeah, and it might be at some point. We haven't necessarily had anyone abuse that yet. I
Yeah,
say yet
interesting.
because,
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
that may be a point in time where that happens and we do have to kind of modify that. And I personally think that that should still be on a individual, if we can, more of an individual consumer basis. If I see Garr is doing really good at returning stuff, then maybe not penalizing you. But myself, I'm like, oh man, I'm not bringing back stuff. And then you have Sabira that's in the middle and she's bringing back stuff here and then maybe waiting on other things here. That you could kind of tailor that based off of each consumer and be able to then maybe add limits or modifications to their account based off of the level of participation and how well they're participating in that system. But again, that's future ideas, not necessarily anything that's
More
implemented
data,
yet.
more scale on that one. Yeah.
We are in the name and age of data.
Have you found that you need to make any adaptations for the geographic spread that you're in and just like different cultures and how they operate with both trust and the economics?
Definitely. I would say it's been very interesting learnings for us to see how a consumer responds in Singapore versus Canada. What they're motivated by tends to be the big one, right? Because we've done promotions or discounts with most of our partners. So where if we go into a participating location, we'll have an extra bonus for the users where they'll get an extra discount, or maybe we'll do specialty promotions at some time where they get a free beverage or a free salad or whatever it may be. And I found that certain demographics, like Singapore, for example, they are very motivated by free. Free stuff is just like the love language to them. You're going to give me an extra free thing? Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get a bunch of containers just to get a free burger or whatever it may be. Whereas in Toronto, they weren't as motivated by it. They didn't necessarily care as much about us giving them free things. We didn't see an uptake on those days necessarily where we did those same promotions. So I would definitely say that it does vary in each demographic. The other thing that's interesting there too is just, I would say, awareness of, why it is that we're doing this or materiality. I can say that in Asia, the sensitivity to plastics, not all consumers, but from what I've seen, the majority aren't as concerned about plastics as they are here in North America. Right? There's not the same kind of concern or even regulation. Being in California, there's a lot of heavy regulations here regarding certain materialities that we don't necessarily have to think about as much in certain geographies.
And I think it's so great that you get the benefit of being worldwide or in specific locations. Are you finding that you have competitors in the different geographies, and how does that impact how y'all work?
Yeah, different geographies have different competitors, and the landscape tends to be different. I will say we've been pretty blessed in some of them. Or Singapore, for example, there was another company that was out there for a little bit that kind of transitioned over to a different region, and so our competitor base there isn't as much as it is in Canada, for example, where there are numerous reuse companies, or in North America, there are numerous reuse companies. Hong Kong is kind of in that middle space where there hadn't been as many, but we're now starting to see that grow and develop. And again, think that regulations and just maybe a little bit of demand have had influence there, which, It's tricky because as someone who grew up an athlete, I definitely understand competition. I'm definitely competitive in certain regards, and I love to play and do all of those things. But also, there's a healthy level of, okay, the only way people are really going to change and grow is if we start changing and growing in our industry space. So we need a healthy level of competition, or again, just awareness, outreach, for people to adopt these kinds of things. So in some regards, I'm like, where can we collaborate? Where can we grow together? Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is change consumer behaviors as well as helping businesses to adopt something kind of new to what they've been doing. So it really is going to require not just myself or another one or two companies to make this thing grow and scale the way that we all kind of need it to see success, not only from a business standpoint, but from an impact standpoint, which is why I think most of us wanted to do this, was to just see how much impact we could truly create.
Absolutely. This is more future question, sort of hypothesizing, sort of thinking past what might be the realities. I'm really curious what your thoughts, because as you bring up competition, and I think the realities of multiple providers in different geographies, those geographies overlapping with one another, or those consumers
Yep.
overlapping, what's the future of sort of reuse, interoperability for consumers? How would you even think about, how would you even approach that idea where you have just competition, but also scale's going to bleed together and there's going to be a need for communication with other systems potentially?
The reuse access, all access pass.
Right.
I've had this,
Right.
I've had this
Totally. How
thought
cool is
too
that?
many times.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to bring myself down sometimes because I definitely am a dreamer. And I'm like,
That's
but
not
we
where
could
we
do
get to.
this
No, no,
and
no,
this
no, no,
and
no.
this.
Here. Oh, here we get to live. We get to dream wherever you want to go. We can take it now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So the reuse access pass being one of them, where again, we have interoperability between reuse companies, between large brands, between small brands. I think, I can say for ourselves, we are already we've already built our technology platform to do this and are continuing. So right now, again, we have Starbucks within our system where a
Yes.
customer wants to borrow a Starbucks cup. They scan the QR code on the Starbucks cup with the Muse application. So, they're accessing Starbucks packaging through the Muse app. But we do have small mom and pop shops participating as well in Toronto, for example, Found Coffee being one of them, that has their own ceramic cup that's within the platform that allows customers to borrow that package from them. Which those deposits, I think something to clarify too is, the quote unquote deposits slash, if it doesn't get returned, that doesn't come to Muse. If it's a third party's package, it goes to the third party and they kind of set the parameter for what that cost will look like. Just to put that out for
No, and you
transparency's
all are
sake.
the
Yeah, the
exchange, the
platform.
platform of which you can then
Exactly.
monitor. Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do see it being similar to that, where you can borrow it from one of those locations, and even though it's a different system, still be able to access that. Would be nice to see as well. We've had a few other reuse companies in the past reach out, curious about our technology platform, and if we can white label that, and we want to. It's just a matter of when we're actually ready, because we technically have three platforms that we operate with within our system. So you have like the forward facing, the operational, and then the food delivery. So managing all of those and tailoring those, still being young, we're working through a lot of kinks before we feel comfortable saying, okay, we feel good to be able to give you this and it's going to work super well and properly. But it is something we want to be able to do because, again, we can actually then enable that interoperability, because if it's powered by Muse, as we say, then it allows our customers and other customers that are using the same interface to then be able to still access the other packaging.
As Sabira's nodding your head, is this you're
I'm
thinking?
yeah,
You're thinking.
I was
Yeah, yeah.
think yeah, I really, I mean that from like a business model perspective, that's really creative and also unlocks the impact, and then the customer doesn't really have to care. I guess I'm just thinking about that user experience part of it. Would the
Mm.
customer in that future log into Muse or the competitor's app and just experience Muse's
Exactly. Either,
technology?
either or. And then I think the other thing, that we've talked about, and I know this is going to get the gears grinding with you guys, that I love these conversations, is the fourth bin, right? This is, in case anyone doesn't necessarily know, we call a fourth bin in reuse. So like you have your trash, your recycling, your compost, and then the fourth bin being the reusables bin. That means any third party can put their reusable product into that fourth bin. It gets collected by, maybe similar to a waste management or city public service. It goes back to a centralized facility space. It's sorted. It's either sent out or it's washed there and then sorted and goes back out and redistributed. That as well is another way that we see reuse growing in the interoperability model, because it means that we can tap into shared collective infrastructure that not one of us has to own or buy. Especially when you think about the scale that we would be operating at, it's going to be massive. It's going to need a lot of infrastructure and a lot of maybe different micro hubs that you kind of get distributed to, that then go to more of a centralized space, just depending on what's available. So definitely see the fourth bin style playing out, as well as, for us, what we're trying to do now is focus on the municipality model. So Banff, for example, I think is a good use case for this, where we are kind of trying to switch away from Muuse branding and have it be a Muuse branded system, versus now they've branded it Banff Borrows. So it's more of a local reuse initiative that, again, is just powered by Muuse technology. So the thought there is Banff has its own kind of branding. They maybe have their own branded reusables. We expand that out, and then you have other towns and municipalities that could do something similar with their own branding and style, making it feel more like a grassroots local initiative. Because, at the end of the day, I think it's also been a challenge and struggle when you're expanding to new markets and regions, not really being from there, to kind of get that same kind of adaptability from consumers there, because of the fact that they're like, who is this third party coming in? Who's Muuse? I've never heard of you. Whereas when you start getting some more of your locals to actually champion it, and more local initiatives to be onboarding into that experience, you're just going to see a bigger drive and change and impact
that
happening.
trust factor, to your point, and that
Exactly.
it's you get to jump ahead almost in that adoption curve of people saying, oh, I know this brand. I don't maybe know Muuse, but I know that they have at least working together. And well, then you mentioned the municipality. You mentioned a location specific. I would like to hard pivot here to Petaluma,
Okay.
and because I think it's a really interesting opportunity. We've touched on working with brands or a brand. We've now touched on working with multiple brands and maybe some branding and marketing.
Yeah.
You all have a really cool project going on in Petaluma, so much so that I hope you're okay with me sharing this personally, that you've located temporarily to Petaluma to see the success of this. Can you share a little bit more about this project in Petaluma? And then we've got follow-up questions, because I love this model and I love this experiment that's happening. So could you share a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So right now we've launched a project with Closed Loop Partners and Next Gen Consortium, where we call it the Return My Cup campaign. And really what that has done is painted the town of Petaluma purple. So it's like a Prince Purple too, which I find very royal, regal. Closed Loop Partners did an immense amount of work into just figuring out consumer insight reports and studies, conducting surveys of, okay, what kind of color should we make this? Why should we do it this way? What should bins look like? What does infrastructure look like? How do we get the city involved in this? And I hats off to them, because they did a lot of the big legwork. They essentially had put out an RFP, and Muuse had been chosen to act as the service provider for this project. What that has meant has reuse is the default option, which is just amazing. Like, I can't even begin to explain to people that don't know what that feels like. It's not an opt-in anymore. It's not just I choose to do this because I can. It's like, no, this is the choice. You can opt out and say, I don't want a purple cup because I maybe am traveling somewhere, or I just want it in the single use. I don't want to be accountable for it, whatever. But it is a reuse. It's a default option. So we are in 32 participating businesses. We have 60 freestanding return bins located throughout the downtown Petaluma area. That is on the streets. That is the fourth bin in action next to garbage cans and recycling bins. We've also recently had schools request for bins that we've kind of put into some of the schools as well. And it really is just, what happens when reuse is the default option? There's no penalty, there's no accountability, there's no reward. Just will people do it because it's how they're supposed to and because they want to. Um, and so they get it from one of these participating businesses, which you have, the brands participating, such as Starbucks, KFC, Pete's Coffee, and then you have local businesses as well participating. So there's Avid's, Delina Pronto, and you have Divine Mother and Tea. So it's nice to see it's almost an equal exchange, I will say, of the large brands versus the smaller businesses participating. So we go in, they give us a purple cup. We take that cup with us. We drink it around town. When we're finished, we can drop it off in any of the freestanding return bins. We can hold on to it and bring it to them later. You can order a home pickup for that, and really just try and get it back into the system as soon as you can.
So do we want to say it in unison, Sabira? Wow, cool. I mean, just
Y'all
where do we
rock.
start?
So royal.
Lead us off,
very
Sabira. Go take this wherever you want to.
Well, I'm very excited to hear that it is the default option. I don't think that's something that I realized. I had seen the word Petaluma and I'm like, I think I know it's a place, and I think I know there's a reusable program going there. I guess, help us understand, is this a timed experiment or a time limited experiment where the data then comes in and then the future of that data helps inform how closed loop moves forward with what the learnings, what is all this input by you guys?
Yeah, great question. So it is a 3-month project, or it's supposed to be a 3-month pilot project to kind of get the data and insights and learnings. Because again, so we've provided the track and trace technology that's implemented on all these cups, so we can essentially see, where the cup comes from, where it's returned back to, and then from there be able to use those to maybe influence the system going forward. Is something that our hope as Muse is that, after, if there is an end date with the project and that happens, we'd be able to maybe just do a pivot to our regular system to offer for the businesses. So again, maybe switching back to the opt-in model just as a way for their consumers who really loved this initiative to not have it just completely go away and not have that option there to return back their products. But I think the hope for myself and what I can say, on behalf of the partners in the city and the community is so many people love this. I can't even begin to tell you. I will be out servicing on the e-bike and I'll be at a return bin emptying a bin. And I have so many people come up to me and they are like, I'm so excited about this. Thank you so much for doing this. And then of course you have other people that have their questions. They're like, okay, well, is this BPA free? Why this? Why that? How long is this going to go for? And then you have your complete naysayers who just don't think it's going to work. You got the spectrum of humans, which I appreciate. You always will. But it is something that I think what everyone is hoping to see is that we would get enough positive feedback, as well as to see it working, to be able to justify kind of expanding this out and making this more of a long-term project. Because I think it kind of is a bittersweet thing to have something implemented for 3 months and really just see that adoption and that user behavior change that we all talk about. It takes 21 days to build a habit. So we see that happen, and then a few months later to kind of have that go away would be sad. But unfortunately, it's you got to start somewhere. And this was kind of that starting point. And it's really going to depend on how the consumers and how the brands and how the community of Petaluma responds to something like this, whether or not it's going to continue, because we only have so much impact as an operator. It really is going to come down to the individual consumers. Are they participating properly to get this to continue, or are they not? Do the brands see value in it, or do they not? So it really is kind of There's only so many things that can, be in our hands of control in that way, and we kind of leave it up to them at that point.
Well, you said operating, and with a great title and the amount of tasks that you have on your shoulders with COO, what people need to understand about startup life is that still means you're going to those bins. And so
Yeah.
that's the best part too. It's like, you can do all of the stuff you need to do between 9 and 5, but by 6 p.m. you're probably hitting those bins. But in those considerations of what you mentioned with major brands. What were some of the top considerations for these major partners? Because it's one thing to come into a town and say, "Hey, we all you local brands, this is what we want to do," and it might be an easier adoption curve for getting some of those on board. But the three of us know, and I think our listeners know, that that's a much larger task at hand when trying to get the right system, the right technology, the right team with you all together to have Starbucks, Pete's, Yum Brands say, "Hey, this is the team we're gonna run with on this." What did that take, both in the competition, but then also in the actual operations? What has that meant for their considerations of this?
Yeah, again, I can only speak to it so much because
Please, only
really
so much.
Closed Loop did a lot of the
Yeah.
heavy lifting there. And Next Gen Consortium is the consortium made up
Yes.
of these large brands. So
Yes.
they are working together to essentially figure out how do they reduce their carbon footprint, their packaging innovation, like how do we, being separate brands, like it's interesting to see that there's a Pepsi and a Coca-Cola participating, right? Because
Yes.
those are competitors at the end of the day. We
Of
all view
course.
them as, are you red or are you blue? Like, what are you here? And it really is interesting that they've come together as well to kind of see what happens because they benefit from these learnings. At the end of the day, any of these businesses are going to decide to take the data and the input because Closed Loop will be issuing a full report at the end of all of this that is going to be out there for people to see and be able to download exactly, and just get an understanding of like how do we use this blueprint for the future. But I think it is still something that they are individual businesses, so they will take that and they will decide to tailor it to their own business and their own needs. So I think that because of the fact that they were already in a consortium, it made it a little bit more simpler. Now you did have some of those brands maybe not participate because maybe it just didn't fit for them at the time. Maybe the packaging we're doing wasn't a right fit. And then you had the others that it just made so much sense to. And then there's a little bit of a differentiator here because, we do have, as you can go into Petaluma and see, there's a purple cup that is just, it's the standard cup that is in all of the businesses outside of Starbucks. Starbucks, of course, has their own Starbucks branded cup that then also has purple on it. So it was still something as well, that they still decided to keep that packaging, tailored for them, which makes sense. I think it's really hard to take, the iconic Starbucks logo that everyone knows and loves. It'd be hard to kind of take that away, and completely just shift it over to the universal packaging that others are using. Now, it's not to say that I personally don't think that we need to start working towards standardized packaging and know within our industry space, this is something we've all kind of been talking about. PR3, they're helping to drive forward reuse standards within our industry and are kind of influenced by a lot of different players in the space of how to do that. So I think that it is something that, in the future, I would love to see that transition happen to, but in the short term, definitely makes sense that, that they might have their own kind of products within the system space. But again, still utilizing that fourth bin concept too, which is nice that it's not all just the same. Like you do have different cups going in there. So it's showing that could also still work is pretty cool in my opinion.
I know we are headed towards the end of our time together. Garr, did you want to ask
Already?
anything? I
Yeah,
know,
already.
really quick.
So quickly.
I mean, if I have one more question that I would love to just better understand, the relationship of the municipality, and what does that mean in terms of current operations? Because I love that citizens are coming up to you and saying, "Hey, this is super cool." It clearly also had to be ironed out a little bit, and
Yeah.
people were on board. But what has that meant? Not just to get it the road maybe was already paved, but what does it mean now as you guys are operating in the city, and what has that meant to your relationship with municipalities?
Yeah, I think it's meant for us just continuing to want to develop out those relationships with municipalities. They did do an informal walkthrough. Zero Waste Sonoma had set up a walkthrough, mainly inviting municipal partners to come in the previous week and just see it, ask questions, interview us, and from there actually have made some pretty good connections with different municipal partners in the area that want to introduce something like this, that have questions that are like, okay, how do we get something like this in our town? So for us, it just kind of proves, we've already been thinking about this from the business perspective of Muse, that this is something we want to work towards. But getting that validation is another thing to just be like, okay, you also see a value in this. You also want to do this. So I think it's something that it's gonna be something we continue to try and drive forward with Petaluma, for example, to see, can we extend this? Anyone that ever tells me that they love the program, my first response is thank you. Talk to your city council members, see if you can get this going. You are the voice of reason here. You are the voice of influence and change. Like, be that one to drive it forward, because again, I can only do so much, as you can as a community, or as we can whenever we actually come together.
Just managing so many feedback loops, just municipal, consumer, brand, all of it. That's fantastic. Sabira, yes, I know it's time. Here we
I
go.
was ready. I was ready. So, I mean, that's really lovely to hear. And I guess I'm curious, and we generally round this out, but it sounds like you have something in action in Petaluma. You have Muse in action around the globe. What about all of that gives you hope for the future of reuse and for circularity?
Mm. Um, well, I will say after 6.5 years in this industry space, I've hit my highs and lows with it, right? Where I'll go, yes, I can see that this is working. And then I'm like, I don't know if this is gonna work, you guys. This seems really hard. And just riding the wave. Um, you guys know what I'm talking about. I have those days of like, why do I choose to get into this out of other things? Like, I must just be a sucker to like keep myself going in that way. But I do, I've kind of landed on a point now that's it's given me a lot of hope, because the positive reinforcement that we've gotten from the community, the impact, which I wish I could share more details that will come out, the impact from something like this when it is a default option. I just can say I don't think that this is new information to us. When it's default, the numbers you get are significant, right? Like we've all seen that if you've been in an event space and it's the default option, how many in just a day you can save. Just seeing that aspect of it and getting to experience that as well, I think has been something. And regulations, regulations are a huge piece of this, that depending on where you are, the wave is coming. It's either do you write it ahead of time? Are you waiting? Are you going to be behind? It's up to you at this point. The change is coming. The wave is coming. Do you want to be a part of that change, or do you not? And I think for me, I've encountered so many people like yourselves as well in our space that just also bring me so much hope and joy, because, no one likes to sit in the boat of suffering alone. Misery loves company. We all we all
Yeah.
like to know that someone's been there too.
You got plenty of company. You got plenty of company. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so I would say that it's that aspect, and future generations. Obviously, I think that is, why I know why I am doing this in that way, because as someone who's in that phase in life where I'm like, okay, do I want to have kids? Do I not want to have kids? I'm kind of in this influx. It scares me, to be honest, a little bit, thinking about having kids and what kind of legacy and what we're leaving them with. And I don't personally want to not be a part of something that at the end of the day, I can't say I didn't try, even if it didn't work or even if it fails. Like I can say I tried at least. And I think from there, it's just the younger generations are, gosh, ready or not, these kids are going to shake some stuff up. Like they are already shaking things up, but they are going to more. So I think it is in that way for them and just myself. It feels good to actually be a part of something that I care about, that I love, that I have passion for. And then again, just being blessed to meet other passionate individuals like yourself keeps me going in that way.
What
Love
a
that.
lovely way, yeah, to round this out. We so appreciate that. So
Well,
thank you for joining us.
Well,
Yeah,
clearly, when this
thanks
report
for
comes
having
out,
me.
if we're so lucky, if the timing is right, we could do a follow up and maybe some
Oh,
data can be talked
please.
about. So
Ooh.
again, maybe
Hopefully.
fingers
Don't
crossed.
do
Yes.
it. Don't do it like a month or two after the
Mhm.
thing ends,
Yeah.
because I may or may not trying to be taking a long sabbatical and go to
Yes.
Hawaii or something.
Totally.
I don't know. I'm
Totally.
just saying. But
You know, we've got it. It's going to be in your inbox. You hit that open whenever you want to.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Excellent.
awesome. No,
Thanks,
love
Brittany.
Options
that.
there.
Yeah, of course.